Hello and welcome to Messy Hair Day, apparently. Welcome to another Digital Photo Mentor Live. This is our first Wednesday of the season. So I hope you got the note about the time change or the day change. So here we are on Wednesdays now, Wednesday evening, North America time, and late in the day in Europe, and if you're in Australia, New Zealand, it's probably Thursday morning. So let us know where you're joining us from. Sunny, warm Oregon, Zay in Michigan, David, Ottawa, representing across the country. Okay. And today we are going to be doing portrait editing. So I'm just going to call up my handy spreadsheet that has all of your information in it. If you are new here, I just want to remind you how you can submit your images. If you use this form, let me just grab it here. If you use this form, and Rob will put a link to that actual page in the chat for you. If you're watching the replay, it will be in the description area below the video as well. So you can submit your images. And did we decide, Rob, I can't remember, did we decide what we were doing in the next 2 weeks? I know we're doing people this week, and I can't remember if we set the next couple or not. So let me grab my sheet here. All right. I'm hoping that AJ is here because I've got a couple of his images from a baseball team photo shoot that I'm going to work on. So I'm hoping he is here. And Rob says we have not picked the topic yet. So we will do that today before we finish up. Okay, so people photography is what we're going to be talking about today. And I've actually spent the last almost week editing portraits, trying out different portrait editing software. So I'm actually going to have a review and overview and comparison of a few different ones, including Luminar Neo, Portraiture number 4, Portrait AI, Portrait Pro, and so on. And what I thought of each of them and what I think is the best portrait editor for you and for me as well. I can't get past my messy hair. So awesome. AJ's here. Okay, perfect. Because I've got your questions and your baseball photos, AJ. So I'm going to jump right in. And I've got lots of great portraits to edit. I've already done this one of Robert's, which was in the thumbnail for this week. Do you want me to be on the side like this, Rob, or you want me to be down in the corner, right? Let me just turn off my... There we go. How's that? I am going to be editing in the software that the person that submitted it wants to see demonstrated. Okay. Camping photos. That's an interesting one. Maybe. Karen, I think I might have some of yours as well. I've got Holly's, Sheila's, Marty's. Yes, I do have one of yours, Karen. And actually, I'm going to show you what I did with that because it worked out really nicely in Lightroom, actually. But I'm going to do that one for you in Luminar. So good evening, Kelly. I guess it is evening. So I want to start with the one that I actually already edited. And this one was Robert's. And I'm going to show you what I did with it. So I'm just going to make a copy. I think this is the... Yes. So as you can see, I didn't actually do a lot of edits here. I did this all with masking, right? So the masks that I used here was on the subject in the background. And then I did an extra one here to brighten up his eyes, right? So I'm actually just going to delete the masks and we're going to start over on this one. Okay, so before I do any masking, the first thing I want to do is the basic panel here. So anything, let me just close this here. Anything to do with setting the color and the exposure. Okay, so this is a raw file, ARW. So we can go in here, and I believe ARW is Sony, if I'm not mistaken. Let's find out. We can find out here. Yes, Sony. Yay, I got that one right. Okay, so this is a Sony raw file, and we can go look at the camera profiles here. So first thing I want to do is just kind of hover over some of them and see if any of these work better than the default Adobe one. Okay, so standard brightens up underneath that hat. And I noticed this one here does as well, lighten. So maybe let's go with this Sony light profile and start from there. So changing the camera profile first does sometimes half the work for you. It gets you much closer to finished right out of the gate just by choosing the camera profile. And this only works on raw files. You'll only get the camera profiles if you have a raw file. Okay? If you don't have a raw file, then you will get some of these other ones, like you'll get artistic and modern and vintage and so on, but you won't have the ones that say camera matching. Okay, so if that's the case and you're not seeing camera matching, that's why. The next thing I want to do is just do my little trick for the whites and the blacks. So I'm going to hold my shift key and hover over the word whites, double click it, and then I'm going to do the same on blacks. So what that does is it scoots these sliders over so that the histogram spreads out and touches the end on each respective slider. Okay? If I want to check for clipping, holding down the Alt Option key, okay, so I can see that there's nothing clipping here, but pushing up these whites has really affected this background area, and I'm not sure that I want to do that. However, I may choose to crop that part out. So I'm going to go and do a crop before I do any further editing, because the histogram is representing the entire image. And if I choose to crop out these bright bits over here next to the tree, something like that, and make this image a little more off-centered and also slightly more square, I get rid of a lot of these white bits. Okay, so let's take a look at the histogram there. See how as I move the crop, it actually changes the histogram. Can you see that? Let's go to there. Now I don't have all those bright bits. See that? So once I accept the crop, okay, you can see that this white slider actually did a nice job. I might give them just a little more space on this side. Something like that. Okay, so make sure you do your cropping as well before you get too far into your edits. Okay. Now I want to make sure that I've got some extra more black. So I'm going to do the Alt Option key while I'm clicking on that. Okay. And I want to brighten up those shadows just a little bit. So clarity is at 8. I usually don't go about higher than about 12 on people, okay, because they start to look sort of grungy, which is not real flattering, especially on this older gentleman. Now I want to get into color correction, and then we'll do some masking. Okay. If you know that you have something that is pure white or pure black in an image, you can use it with the eyedropper. Now, do we know that this camera or strap or whatever is around his neck here is black? Well, we could try it, right? Now, I don't have my navigator open. If we have this window open, we can see the preview. And when I hold this little eyedropper over, you can see the preview change. So if I put it on his orange shirt, it's going to do the opposite, or cyan. If I put it on the green, we're going to get magenta or pink, right? So I'm kind of going, okay, is this neutral? Let's try. Okay. Not bad. Or we could even try in his beard. Okay, so notice how that took out some green. Okay, if I undo, we were at minus 24 and the magenta, so lots of green. And if I go in here again, less green. Now I think he looks neutral, but neutral is not necessarily what we want for portraits. I usually warm it up a little bit past the neutral side, right? And I think it's gone just a tad bit too far in the magenta zone. So that's a better color, I think. Right? There's the original so far. Right? Still might be a little blue. Let's go something like that. So it's this dance. Now keep in mind that these sliders here kind of are opposite. So if the image feels yellow, it may be yellow and green. So you might have to go this way on the top slider to the left and to the right on the bottom slider. Okay, so as I move more towards yellow, you see how it starts to feel like it's green again. Right? So then I need more magenta as well. Right? So adding yellow and green, they're really sort of linked together. Okay, so you want to do this dance between the magenta and the yellow. Okay. Now I'm going to get into the local edits or the masking. So I've created a number of different presets. I'm just going to turn this off. I've created some called darken and blur background. And if you hover over them, you'll see a preview on the whole image. That's a little too dark. I've got another one, darken and blur number 2. That one's not bad. Darken background, lighten subject. Darken sky, lighten subject. I'm actually going to go with this one here, this darken number 2. And all it's done is done background select, okay? And then I've applied some darkening. Okay, so I'm just going to delete it again and show you how I did that. So let me delete it. There we go. So just simply open the masking tool. That's this guy right here. And then choose select background. Okay, now he's got a red shirt on and the mask is red. So we could change the mask to this fluorescent green, the mask color, and because I want to be able to see if it's on him, and I couldn't tell because his shirt is red. Okay, so I've changed the mask to green, and now I can see that it selected the background really well. Okay, did it get a little bit of his hat? Maybe, but I think it's pretty good. So now what I want to do is darken. I want to bring the highlights back down. See, look at the highlights is really making this sky actually come out blue in there. Okay. And that actually looks pretty good. Now, while I'm here, if I want to change the color, I can. If I want to cool it down even a little bit more. So the background behind him is cool, but he's warm. He will project a bit more. Okay. And that looks pretty good. Now I can rename it. I wish that when we did the background select, it would actually automatically name it as background. It's kind of one more step that I wish Lightroom would do for me. And then I'm going to select subject, okay? And then once again, it's done a good job of picking him out. And what do I want to do to him? Well, I want to brighten the shadows a bit more because underneath his hat is really dark, okay? But I want to make sure that I'm not flattening him out too much. So I'm going to put on the clipping warnings with my J key. So I want to make sure that I'm keeping some blacks in him. Okay, so as I raise the shadows, I might actually decrease the blacks. Okay. Now, if I increase the exposure, I get more of his face. And then I want to bring the highlights down, which you could see affects his shirt and his beard. Okay, let's bring the exposure up again. So exposure, remember, is midtones. So I'm sort of doing this dance of lower the highlights, increase the exposure, like so. Okay, so I'm going to rename this one. I could call it subject or man. And the little eyeball shows me what that's doing. Okay, so I found that his eyes were still a little bit too dark. So that's why I added a third mask using a radial gradient. And I just sort of drew an oval and then positioned it over his eyes like this, and then just brightened it up a little bit. I could probably make it a little bit more so it's only the top. There we go. Okay, can you see how all of these are working together to brighten him up? Okay, if I turn off all the masks, where's my little eyeball? There we go. See what the masks are doing. Okay. So this is where we're at so far. And really all I need to add here is maybe a vignette. So I'm going to add my preset, medium vignette. Actually, let's try the dark one. That looks pretty good. And I want to shift the color of his shirt a little bit, okay? And possibly his face. I still feel like there's some kind of a color shift in there. So I'm just going to grab the HSL in the Hue tab, grab the eyedropper, and when you click on a color and drag up and down, it's going to affect everything that is that color, okay? So you can see that I'm clicking and holding, and it's affecting the red and the orange. Okay, now I feel like he's a little bit too green still, so I'm going to do the sliders manually, but doing this little trick first helps me know which sliders to use. So I'm going to go a little more red on this one and actually a little more orange on this one. So he's got more orange in his face, right? And his shirt goes a little more red. Let's see what that's doing. A little bit of shift. Okay, now I also want to darken the shirt, okay? But the problem with that is his face has a lot of orange as well. Okay, let's try red. Red is better. It kind of darkens his ears. So that's maybe a happy medium. But it's still not what I want. So I want to darken his shirt a bit more. And I can't do it with this tool because it's not something that you can get access to with the masks. Now with the mask, you can select a color range. So you could before. So let's do color range because I want to target just his shirt. Okay. And let's turn the mask on. Okay, so we can see that it's really just getting his shirt. Actually, I expected it to pick up his face. So that's actually pretty good. If it did pick up his face, okay, I could have done minus. Well, let's just expand it. Let's just see what happens. I want to show you this. Okay, so if I expand it, am I picking up his? Still not sure I'm picking up. No, it's still just picking up his shirt. Okay, so that's good. I was hoping to pick up his face as well. Let me try another one. Let's just try a bigger color range. Okay, so it's done a really good job. If it had picked up his face, I could do subtract person, okay, and then just choose face. So once it detects him, okay, I can say I just want to subtract his skin, right? Or maybe I want to have the hand and just subtract the face skin, okay? So there you go. See, it was picking up some of his face skin. Okay, so now that I've got the shirt selected, I can darken the shirt. See that? Now adding some black will increase the color as well. But maybe I just want to bring the saturation of that shirt down a little bit. So you could really adjust these tones specifically. Now, if I wanted to, I could actually change the color of his shirt, right? Let's just say I want a blue shirt instead. I don't know if I'm able to change it completely blue, but I can definitely shift it into a different color. See that? If I go more blue this way, now let's go back to get rid of this color. Okay, let's try this one. So this is a hue shift. Okay, look at that. Now we got a hue shift. Now we can have a blue shirt, right? Now I can do things like maybe expand that mask a little bit more because it's not picking up quite the edge. It's also getting his hand and some of his cheek there. So can you see when I did that? Let me dial the saturation all the way down because you'll see what's happening. Okay, it is picking up half of his face and his hand as well. So I got to be careful here with what I'm doing in terms of shifting. Okay. See that? Off and on. It's definitely darkening this part of his chin. But in this case, if I leave the color and just darken, it actually brings his beard out a little bit more and picks up the tones, right? Something else you can do with masking now with the new portrait tools is you can get really specific. Let's call this one shirt. You can get really specific on people editing in which part of the person you want to edit. Okay, so once again, it's selected him. Now I can choose, what was I going to do here? Teeth, actually. Okay, let's say I want to brighten his teeth. So I can choose mask. You see, it's chosen his teeth. And I want to bring the saturation down because they're a little bit yellow. And let's just brighten them a little bit. See that? Okay, now you don't want to do this, obviously. Let's zoom in a little bit more. Okay, can you see what that's doing on his teeth? A little too bright, I think. I'd like to try to make it a tone or two brighter without going too much overboard, right? And then I can do people again. And I'd like to brighten his eyes, right? Now, there's a few different things. You can have eye sclera, which is the white parts of the eyes, and also iris and pupil. See, if you hover over it, it will show you which part you're selecting. Okay, so I'm going to go with those. Now, you can see that's also got facial hair. So we might do that as well. And I can do two separate masks or mask them together. So I've got basically all of the eyes, right? And here I want to brighten a little bit. Maybe give some whites. Okay, can you see what that's doing to his eyes? I'll come in even closer. Oops, lost my mask. There we go. Watch his eyes. Okay, so off, on, off. See how dark his eyes are? It's got to catch up a minute. Can you see how dark his eyes are? It's not catching up on me. Let me rename this. All right, let me turn it off. See, even Lightroom is slow. It's got my slow catching up. Let's see. Yes, teeth was a very tedious thing because you had to paint it in, right? So the masking in Lightroom has come so far, right? There, now you can see the before, okay? So look how dark his eyes are, okay? And then when I turn it back on and it catches up, we'll see his eyes sparkle more. Okay. Now you'll notice that there was also a facial hair. So I think let's just see if it catches. It should catch his beard, but let's see if it picks up on his eyebrows as well. Okay, because there is one for eyebrows. Okay, now if I hover over, it should give me an idea of what that's going to look like. My Lightroom is slowing down here. Not picking up eyebrows. I could have even done clothes. Okay, so I chose the color selector to do his shirt, but I could have chosen clothes here as well. Okay, so that's just another option. Okay, so I'm going to choose facial hair, and I'm going to choose eyebrows as well. And let's just mask them together and see what happens. Okay. Okay, it's definitely chosen his hair and his eyebrows. Okay, now what do I want to do with them? I am going to take the saturation down just to make sure that his beard is nice and white. Maybe he's going to do Santa Claus. And I'm going to add some texture. Okay, so pick up a little bit of that texture and clarity. So I don't want that in his skin, but I do want it potentially on his eyebrows and hair. So then I could call it facial hair and eyebrows. I missed an eye, but that's okay. All right, let's see what else we can do. Now we haven't done skin. Okay, so there's more we can do with people masking. So every time you got to go back and do this, or I could have done separate masks for each one of them from the get-go. Okay, so I'm going to choose facial skin. Actually, let's choose body skin this time. And this time I'm going to do two separate masks. So I don't have to come back and do it again. So I'm going to create these masks. Right. Now you can see mask one, mask two. So mask one is facial skin. And now I just want to take down a little bit of the texture. So he's not quite so grizzled on the skin area. Okay. And this is also an opportunity where you can brighten the face. Okay, with facial skin. So I could brighten him even more. Okay, see that's getting just the skin. Just a little bit. Okay, like so. And make sure I'm going to call this one facial skin. And then the other one, which is body skin, is going to be his hand. So it's picking up. Let's get in here. It's picking up his hand and his neck. And in this case, I want to darken a little bit. Lightroom is running extremely slow. I'm going to see if I can close some of my other apps here. So it's not just Lightroom. Okay, so I've got everything else closed now except Lightroom and the program I'm using to broadcast. Stephanie says, I always like seeing Darlene edit. I learn something every time. Awesome, Stephanie. So what have you learned so far? My photo theme. Which photo theme is that, Kelly? Still waiting for Lightroom to catch up. There we go. Okay, so now you can see where it's masking. Missed a little bit of his neck there, but I'm not too worried about that. Right? Yeah, it's really sluggish to catch up here. Really sluggish. Holy cow. Okay, so what it's doing is I can darken his hand and his neck this way. Okay. So let me back out. And let's take a look at the full before and after now. Okay. So there's the before. Right. He's very dark. His shirt is very light. Now he is brighter. His face is brighter, and his hand and his shirt are more subdued. Right. So he really jumps out of that portrait. Okay. Ah, no, I don't know you're running a poll. News to me. Okay, that's fun. What's in the poll, Rob? What are you asking them? Quite a transformation, Karen says, right? And I mean, I did this in a few minutes, and I could have done it obviously much quicker if I wasn't talking about it. However, you can also save these things as presets, right? So I've saved all of these here. And when you're dealing with the people presets, right, it remembers all of the AI stuff that you used, okay? So anything that's doing facial skin selection, if I change this one to close instead of the color, I could apply this then on another image, especially of him, that's different, okay? And you don't have to brush anything in. Did I do any brush work? Nada, zero, zippo, right? All right, so that is a great example of a before and after. Okay, that one is, we'll call that one done. Now I want to do this one of Karen's, and I think I did a quick adjustment here in Lightroom on this one. If I recall correctly, yes, I did. Okay, so the original, and I'm going to undo it, okay, is an original raw file, and it was quite dark on them. Yeah, it's catching up again. I'm going to open Luminar because my Lightroom is just taking really too long, and I don't know why. I might close Lightroom. All right, let's just open Luminar and see if we can get a better result over here going directly. Because the original of this one, they're a little bit backlit, so they were dark. So I'm guessing this is maybe at a wedding that Karen attended. And I'm just going to find the portraits. And I'm hoping they're in there. There we go. There they are. Okay, so now you can see the original image. So I also cropped it. So yes, it does look like they're in a wedding arch of some kind, and somebody's arm is over here. So you can see the one that I did in Lightroom, I cropped already quite a bit. So let's see if we can do something similar pretty quickly with this one here in Luminar as well. So the first thing I'm going to do, let me just check that there's no edits on here. I'm just going to undo everything. So I'm back to the original. Good. And I'm going to crop it. Let's see what Luminar thinks is a good crop. So the composition AI We'll have Luminar analyze it. Now you notice that it cropped into the pole as well, but it cropped off a lot of their body. Right? Now the reason that you'll see what I did in Lightroom was I cropped up higher like this, because when you are cutting or cropping into people's bodies, you want to try to avoid cropping into the arm like this. Okay, so you don't want to cut at the joints. You don't want to cut at the wrist or the elbow or the knee or the ankle. You want to kind of crop mid joint. Okay, so let's take a look at how I would crop this one. Okay, so that's the suggestion from Luminar. It was up like this. So I don't want to go into the elbow. I can either go mid arm like this and keep some of the material up top here, right? Or I can do what I did, which is come up even higher, right? I came in even closer and ended up with something more like this. So I got rid of this whole post and I really focused in on them, right? Looks like we've got some swimmers in the background there in the water. Okay, so I ended up with something more like this with less space up top even. Yeah, I'm still not completely happy with this crop. Let's just undo this and do it manually. Let's see what happens if we keep the pole in. Right? If I keep the pole in, the top part makes more sense. Okay? The other reason I cropped off the bottom is kind of got the beach showing here. So I came in a little closer into the arm. And let's keep the pole for some context. Okay. So now they're kind of off-centered down in this bottom corner once my crop catches up. Okay. Something like that. I don't mind that actually, because now they're sort of off-center. I didn't come in quite enough on this post here. There we go. Okay, so then the next thing you want to do when you're doing a raw file, the first thing you want to do after cropping is develop raw. Okay, again, we have the camera profiles. Okay, and this one is a DNG. What does it tell me? What kind of camera it was? Okay, so also a Sony. Okay, so it's giving me Sony profiles here. So let's see what portrait does. Let's just scan over them. We don't want monochrome. Landscape is contrasty. Okay. Neutral. Neutral is actually not bad. Look at how that picked up light on them. So neutral is kind of nice. And camera portrait picks up some light on them as well. So let's look at camera neutral, camera portrait. They have a bit more color in camera portrait. So I'm going to go with that one. Okay. I'm going to go with some smart contrast. And I'm going to do the same that I did with the whites and the blacks in Lightroom. Okay. Keeping in mind that I'm going to edit the sky separately. Okay. So I'm going to add some whites. Now we can't do the little double click thing, but I can turn on the clipping warnings, and that's with the J key. Okay. Nikon, interesting. Interesting that that's Nikon, and Lightroom thinks it's a Sony. That's interesting. If you would like to get my keyboard shortcuts for Luminar or Lightroom, we have that available as a download, free cheat sheets for keyboard shortcuts. So if you could put the links to both of those. Raymond says the dress is beautiful. Don't cut it off. I could come back to that as well, Raymond. I can come back to the cropping and see if we can do a little bit more dress. But I want to add some whites because right now there's nothing clipping in the white area. So I'm increasing the whites until we get some clipping and then just coming back a tiny bit. But I actually might leave the clipping there and then bring the highlights back down. So see how there's that dance there again? And when I adjust the sky only, because we don't need to replace this sky, right? The sky itself is lovely. We just need to bring it out more. Okay, so look at what exposure is doing. Keeping the highlights down, right? Now I can turn my clipping warnings off. I want to make sure I have a little bit more black. I'm okay with these blacks in the background going really dark, but I don't want them to get too dark, especially her hair. So a little bit of shadows lifting, and that looks actually pretty good. So let's apply that. While I'm here, I always want to make sure that I do chromatic aberration and distortion correction. So that's a lens distortion correction. Okay. And do we need any noise reduction? Let's zoom in on this one a little bit and see if there's any noise. So we can apply a little bit of noise reduction here. It doesn't look like there is. It looks like it maybe was flashed. Okay, so I can tell that flash was used here for two reasons. One, he's got these catch lights in his eyes that are small, and I could see a shadow here beside his nose. So definitely a flash was used here. Okay, so I could do a little bit of noise reduction if I'm worried about it, or I can add some sharpness here. Okay, so this is overall sharpness. Okay, and when you bring the masking slider up, it keeps it off of the skin. So I usually just bring it up somewhere around 70. Okay. How's our color? While we're in here, do we need to adjust the color? The eyedropper, if you want to use the eyedropper, the only place you'll find it in Luminar is here under the Develop Raw or Develop tool. So let's try the eyedropper on his shirt. Okay, it definitely warmed things up a little bit. So now we're going to get more of those sunset colors. And I think that was actually a really good change. Might be a little bit too yellow, so I'll dial that back just a tiny bit. But let's see where we're at so far. So brightening it up, right? And this is all in the Develop Raw tool, okay? Now, if we want to add a curve, right? You missed giving the keyboard shortcuts, cheat sheet links for Lightroom and for Luminar, please, Rob. If you want to add some curves, there's one video on our YouTube channel about using curves. It does talk about it from Luminar AI, but the curve is the same. I'm going to make a new video about that. And the curve is the same in any program that you use it. So that's the next thing you need to share, Rob, is the curves tutorial. So when you make what's called an S curve, so you give it more of a angle like this, the sharper the S curve, the more contrast. Can you see that? When you do an inverted S curve, you're lowering the contrast. And if you keep your curve only, for example, to the middle like this, and I'm going to keep the other parts flat. So flat meaning on that line that was going straight across. So I'm only adding contrast right now in the midtones. But I know that there's better ways of doing that actually in Luminar. So I'm going to leave the curve alone and close Develop Raw. And let's revisit, let's revisit that cropping. Okay, that was suggested to keep the dress in. So let's go off aspect ratio then and keep a little bit more of the dress. I'm still not crazy about cropping mid-arm on her. Okay, so this is an awkward place to crop people. Okay, so that's why I went above the elbow. But let's keep a little bit more of the dress, something like that. Okay. All right, now where do we want to go with it? Okay, we could go to the next tool down, which is Enhance AI, because I know that this sky enhancer is going to work nicely on the sky. And it does. Okay. Accent AI is going to give us maybe overall more punch, more color, and it's picking up sort of too much white on that corner there, but we can always mask it, right? So let's just see. Let's go to an extreme here, and let's just see what it's doing. So it's not affecting them a whole great deal. See that? It's mostly affecting the sky, and I'm just going to dial it back a little bit. Something like that. Okay. This is why I didn't leave that part at the bottom, because Raymond, the speech here kind of was distracting for me. Right. So next thing I'm going to do is add a vignette, because this part is really light. So I'm going to add a vignette. I'm going to darken the edges. Let's turn the feather down to 0. And because we've cropped, this is actually something that we talked about in the last week's Q&A with the Skylum team, was the post-crop vignette. So you're also missing keyboard shortcuts. Yes. Oh, you got the keyboard shortcuts. Okay. So if you could share a link to the Q&A with Skylum team, we talked about the post-crop vignette. They're aware of it. They're working on it. They know that that's an issue for people. Okay. So currently we need to size it smaller. And then I'm just going to reposition it so it's around them, like so. Maybe even rounder, like that. And then bring my feather up. So I bring the feather down to be able to see the position, and the darkness is down, the amount here. And then I bring the feather up and the amount up as well. So I want it to be a little bit more subtle. Okay. Now that I've got the center selected, I can also use it to brighten them. Okay. See that? So once I've gotten the vignette where I want it in the position that I want it, I can light them and darken outside at the same time. Okay. Make sure you keep your feather high because you don't want that. Can you see the spotlight effect? Okay. So you don't want to make vignettes that look like that. Okay. So keep your feather up high. Mine is almost always up in the 70, 80 range. Okay. See what it's doing. So we've done a lot of things already to lighten and brighten them, right? If I don't use the inner light, I'm going to come back to another tool. So I'm going to turn that down for a moment because we can also use this tool here, Relight. Okay. So it allows me to brighten things in the foreground and darken things in the background and then adjust the depth in the scene. So the depth mapping. Okay. So give it a minute to catch up. Okay, so it's done a pretty good job here. Okay, you can see that there's a bit of a halo. And again, I turn these sliders to an extreme so that I can work with this to try and figure out, okay, do I need to mask? How's this halo? Is it going to work? Especially on a complex subject like this that has really complex hair, right? It's actually done really well. I'm going to go all the way here. Okay. Now that I've got it, it looks like it's doing a pretty good job. I'm going to go not so far with the darkness. The brightness on them is actually really nice, right? Look at how it's like lighting them up. You see that? And you can actually shift the distance, okay? So the depth will light things, if you bring it forward, light things closer to you, this 100, versus it will keep the distance darker. Okay, so I can actually use it to darken this corner even further. So let's take a look at what that's doing. Okay, now I can warm them up even more so that they're like sunlit and cool the background off. Let's give it a little bit more blue, like so. See what that's doing? So that's a little more controlled way of lighting them as opposed to using that center spot in the vignette. Okay. Maybe not quite so bright and not quite so dark. Something like that. Okay. Now I'm going to jump to one of my favorite tools. Okay. Up in here, I've got my favorites, color harmony. So color harmony works great when you have colors that are opposite in your image. So yellow and blue, what do we have here? We've got magenta and green as opposite, and purple and orange. Okay, so nighttime photos, things like that. Okay, I'm not done with the heads yet, Kelly. I definitely see the heads in the water. I'm going to take care of those. Okay, so far we've got this working really nicely, but I want to bring this color contrast slider up. Okay, so what the color contrast slider does is wherever this slider is on the hue scale, it brightens and adds contrast to that color. So see what that does to their skin tone, but it's also doing the same in the sky, and it darkens the opposite color, in this case, blue. Okay, if we go the other way, it darkens them and brightens the blue, which obviously we don't want. Okay, so I like it somewhere in there. See how it's picking up different tones in her skin? I'm just going to dial it back a little bit, but somewhere in there is subtle. See what that's doing? Giving them this beautiful sun-kissed look. Right? Now we have the option of making the warmer colors even warmer, right? Like the sky, cooling them off, making the blues more blue, making the blues more purple. Okay, so we can make the blues a little bit more blue, but I don't like what it's doing to his shirt, so we can fix that. And if I want warmer, if I want more warmth like this in the sky, I just have to come back and do it again. Okay, so all I'm going to do on this one is I'm just going to erase it from his shirt. Okay, so I'm going to get a nice soft brush, and I'm just going to make sure his shirt and her dress are not getting too much blue. Okay, because they've got a tinge of blue in them, okay, already. See what that's doing? It's doing a nicer job on her face than on his, so I'm actually going to slightly erase it from his face. Just make it a little bit more subtle. See that? So it just picks him up a little bit, but not so much. So close the tool. Now, if I want to affect the sky, all I have to do is open it again. And this time I could say, okay, I definitely want to apply the color here. So I want to warm up these oranges in the sky. Something like that. Let's see, how does that look? Look at the sky. And then we can use the Mask AI, because in the Mask AI, hopefully it has find sky, right? So we're going to wait for it to do its thing. And voila, we can just select sky and it will mask it into the sky for me. It's not perfect, but it's good enough, I think, to apply these edits. See that? Beautiful. Okay. Now let's deal with those heads. Okay, so I'm going to put myself over here for a moment just so we can deal with these heads. Okay, so the erase tool is what we're going to want here. Okay, whenever you're using erase, always come into at least 50%, if not 100% view, because this guy is really close to her arm. Okay, so I want to erase this guy, but I don't want to get her arm. Okay, so let's paint over him and see how it does. And when you're zoomed out, you can't see that sort of little gap in between. It's really hard to paint effectively. Okay, let's see how it does. Fingers crossed. I don't know about this one over here. Oh, it did good. Look at that. Okay, let's get rid of this one as well. See that one? Not so much. Don't like what it did there. So I'm just going to paint over it again and restore. And I'm just going to do it little by little. So I'm going to do the top part first. Second part. That's better. I'm still not 100% happy with that because it's not got a nice smooth edge to it. Well, that's better. And we're going to apply mystical or some kind of a glow to this later anyways. So we're going to get all of that. That looks pretty good. Okay, now let's go over and get this guy over here. All right, so this one, we need to make sure we get the whole guy, including any sort of reflection. Let's see how it goes. Not bad. You can see sort of the outline there, but I can use the clone tool to clean that up as well as the other one. So erase gets me 90% of the way there. Look at that. Okay, and then we're going to go down to clone. Okay, at the bottom, I'm going to select my spot over here, and my brush needs to go a lot smaller. And now I'm just going to clone at about 40%. Okay, so I'm cloning just from the side, just to kind of blend that edge a little bit. See that? And I'm constantly changing my selection. So I'm holding the Alt Option key. So I'm cloning from this way to this way, from this way to this way. So I'm just getting rid of those hard edges from the erase tool. Okay. And like that. That looks pretty good. And I can do the same over here. Okay, so it wasn't perfect. We just blend a little bit, like so. And the same over here, right? Always changing my spot from here, going from the left over, like so. Speaking of leftovers, we have leftover pulled pork to eat for supper today. So see that? And then just this one here, clean that up a little bit. Okay. So that's how to use the erase tool and the clone tool together effectively. Write that down, Rob. That's a good video. I'm going to make a tutorial on that using the clone tool and the erase tool together. Okay, so I'm still not happy with how this bottom part is here. I'm not crazy about this particular crop, to be honest. I like coming in here because I really don't like that beach. Okay. I think that's a lot more effective image. I wish that there was another thing over here to frame them with, right? Let's try something. Let's duplicate this layer. We're going to try something here. Let's give them more space over here. Actually, let's do this again. We're just going to play with something here. I'm going to play with a couple of things here. Okay, I've not tried this before, so this is an experiment. You guys are going to see this. I'm going to duplicate this layer. So duplicate layer, right? Then I'm going to flip it around, right? So I'm going to flip it left to right so that the post or this thing over here goes over here. You know, did it do it? I clicked it. I'm not sure if it did it. Not yet. Let's see. It doesn't want to flip it. I think we just have to catch up. Let's just see what happens. So my idea is, there we go. My idea is to flip it and then just paint some of that pole in on the other side from that second layer. Okay, so I don't want to show this layer for the most part. Okay, so I want to basically fill it. So when you fill the mask, okay, it's going to fill everything with a mask, meaning hide everything. Okay. Or I could do a linear gradient here and just start from here and say, okay. Oh, I think I got to start over again. We're going to clear it. Yeah. We're behind. It's still catching up. So my Lightroom is behind and my Luminar is behind. But let's just see. Okay. I was hoping the swimmers would be considerate and get out of the water. No. People don't care when you're taking photos. They really don't. So head's gone. And they're blurry enough, and when we do like a mystical or an Orton effect on there, you're going to see them blend in even more. Okay, so let me see. All right, we're back in here. I need to do this flip again. Hopefully it's going to catch up. Okay, I'm going to leave this one sit for a moment, and hopefully my Lightroom is caught up. So we're still going to come back and do the post on this one, okay? Rob's going to want the wedding couple, this one. So if you're cutting this one out for later, Rob, you're going to have to splice them together. Yeah, see, look what I did here. I did a major crop on this one. So, and this would work well also, but we're trying something different. Okay. Let's see. What else was I going to do in Lightroom? AJ. Okay, so AJ sent me these. Are you still here, AJ? Sent me these group photos, and I played around with them a little bit already in Lightroom using the masking tools. That was your software of choice. So the original, unfortunately, these are JPEGs, and they are a little underexposed. So let me just do a virtual copy and reset it. and take a look at the histogram. You could see that there's a gap here on the right. Okay. So you asked me questions about tips for taking group photos and things as well. So preparation, camera settings, and post. Also in today's people session, can you critique the EXIF data composition, what we can do to prepare better? Well, I'm way ahead of you, AJ, because I was planning on doing that when I saw your images. So yes, let's talk about the actual shooting of this as well, because when we're dealing with a group like this, you've got ISO 360, f8, and then a thousandth of a second. So it looks like you are using what mode to shoot? Aperture priority. Okay. Now, I'm not sure if you've got something dialed in for your exposure compensation. It doesn't look like it. It says 0 EV. And you're on pattern metering mode. But the challenge with that is that it's taking in the overall scene, and it saw lots of bright stuff like the sky and the uniforms, and it caused the image to be underexposed. Okay, so when you're seeing something, when you take a shot, especially when you're doing a group or a portrait like this, and you have 3 seconds to review it, review the image, look at this histogram of the very first shot. Okay, or better yet, if you have a person that can stand there for you before the group gets there, take some test shots first and be ready before the group gets there. Okay, so number one thing that I would have done here is to use your exposure compensation probably about +1, okay, because it's underexposed. Second, I would have shot raw. So I don't know if you're into shooting raw or not, but definitely shooting raw, because the challenge I had pulling detail out of this is that because it's a JPEG, there's not a lot there. Right. So what I did was same thing with the masking. Right. I used the masking tools on the sky to darken the sky, and I actually added a bit of color to it using that blue slider, and then I brightened the subjects. But I also did things like, for example, I toned their color down because I found that they got sort of orangey looking, like they'd been in the tanning salon a little bit too long. Okay. Like so. Okay. So I'm brightening them. But if we take a close look in here, right, we can see that actually these guys in the back row are not in focus, right? And the guys in the front kind of are, but it looks like your focus is out here somewhere. So my question also would be about what are you using in terms of, are you using a single dot to focus on this, AJ? Yes, you sent me JPEGs. Are you using a single point to focus? And if so, where did you place the focus? Because that's the other piece of it, okay? So F8 is great for a group like this, but on the group, you want to focus here on the middle row. So don't focus on the front row, because your focus is 1/3 in front and 2/3 behind. Yes, so 1/3 in front, 2/3 behind, okay? Am I thinking? Now I'm thinking. Now I'm questioning myself. So you weren't on single focus. So which focus mode were you using? Did you have it on zone? Because if the camera chose to focus on the grass, your focus is then closer to you. So 1/3 closer to you and 2/3 behind. So ideally you want to focus 1/3 of the way into the group. But when you have 3 rows like this, you kind of go with the middle row, and you're far enough away that at F8, you should get all 3 in focus. Right? If we look at the other one, yeah, see, they're still orange. Oops. So if we look at the other one, right, when I brighten them up again, they're still coming out really sort of orange. So I've dialed their color, yeah, down, and I can work on that in the HSL panel a little bit as well. Okay, so yeah, their color is a little off. There, that's a little better, right? So I'll just do a little bit of luminance, and you can see that I've lowered the saturation on the orange and the red, right? So And I've also dialed the saturation down on the green quite a bit, okay, because the grass was kind of neon. Okay, so I've dialed the saturation down on the grass and on them to sort of neutralize it. And I think if you have the raw file, obviously this is going to come out a lot better. But when we look at it, right, I still don't see, okay, we're at 200%. Let's go to 100%. The sharpness is better, okay, but I'm still seeing sharp grass in the foreground, and it seems to fall off on the guys, okay? So it looks like you're front focusing. This is what's called front focusing, okay? So if you focused here, you're picking up a little bit of the front row, and it's falling off to the back row, okay? Back button focus definitely on the center. Interesting. Are you using continuous focus mode or single, meaning it locks focus? Because if you'd been shooting the game and you were using continuous, you need to shift that, okay? Could be the lens is front focusing. Yeah, definitely check the lens in terms of do a test. Do a test and photograph something where you get a focus. You can get these focus targets for testing your lenses, and shoot it at an angle where you focus on the target. And if you see that the sharpness is actually closer to you, your lens can be front focusing. Okay. Continuous focus. Yeah. So turn off your continuous focus, because if you're moving your camera around a little bit, it could be hunting and it could pick the wrong spot. Okay. So lock it in with single focus. Okay. So lock it in, do a test on your camera to see if it's front focusing by you don't even need a focus target, honestly. Just pick a fence or something that's got words on it, okay? Shoot at an angle to it and just make note of where you focused. Or get a newspaper, draw a red line, focus on the red line from an angle, and then if the red line's in focus, you're good to go with the lens. And if it's front focused, then do your focus correct to bring it back in, okay? So definitely correct that. Let's see what lens we're using here. 17 to 55. So yeah, it could be. I mean, that's a good lens. So you should be able to calibrate that. I'm going to come back over here. Okay, we're still not flipped. So I want to do this again. Flip. Okay, I'm hoping this is going to flip. All right. All right. So does that help? The raw were sharper. Okay, interesting. But zoom into like 200% like I did, AJ, and look for where your focus point is. Like where does it fall off and where is it the sharpest, right? Because it'll fall off forward and it'll fall off backward, right? But if the grass in front of them is in focus and it's falling off to the guys, you focus too far forward. Okay. I hope that's helpful. Well, you tell me, is that helpful? A Google review, Rob says. Oops. There's that's a really convoluted link, but if you have a shorter one, that would be great. If you have like a tiny URL or something. So if you want to give us a Google review of our business and our YouTube channel, that would be great. And please remember to give this video a thumbs up, as well as subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Right? Awesome. I'm glad you got some value from that. And I mean, ideally, if you have a flash when you're doing those kinds of things, putting a little bit of light on the front would be helpful also, because they're kind of backlit. And I know that lots of times you don't have that opportunity and it happens really fast, and you don't have the chance. So, doing the best that you can, but you definitely need more exposure and then check your focus. Right? I really want to do this one in Luminar, but it's not letting me flip. Maybe I can flip it this way. Aha. Okay, let's work with this. Okay, so now I want to mask this layer, but I want to see what's happening if I do a linear gradient, because if I do it this way, well, I want the red part to show, so I want to mask it here, right? And I want it fairly sharp, so I want just the post and the flowers. So we're going to work with that. Aha. That's what I thought. Yeah, because I cropped it, it's doing a weird thing. I rotated it with cropping. It's got to, I'm going to clear that. I've got to flip it this way. Hopefully it's going to catch up here. I really think this is going to work. If I can't get this to work during the live, I'm gonna keep working on this because I really kind of want to test this idea that I have here. Let's do another one in Lightroom. Okay, so this one here, I'm gonna do Karen's. I think Karen said she had to go, but hopefully she'll watch the replay. So this one here has really nice lighting already. So we shouldn't have to do too much, right? So let's do our basic edits. Okay, I'm going to pick the color profile, right? Landscape, portrait, neutral, standard. Standard adds a lot of contrast. Portrait looks a little softer, so I'm going to go with that one. I'm going to do shift double click, right? So see how that added a bunch of contrast? So I don't necessarily want that much contrast. Let's bring the exposure up a little bit, right? So even that, it looked like a good exposure. Even that was a little under. I'm going to punch these shadows up a little bit here because I'm going to darken the background overall. And we got the spinny wheel. And then let's check for blacks. Make sure we got some black. Okay. Clarity, no more than 10 or so for portraits. And now we can start to do some things like a vignette. I'll just do my edge darken. Maybe go with strong. And this one, okay, I'm going to use my portrait retouch preset that I made. Okay, so I made my own portrait retouch preset for Lightroom. And all it does is it uses the masks that I created before that I showed you with the other guy. So face and body, eye, eyebrow, hair, iris and pupil, lips, and teeth, okay? And it does some adjustments for each of them. So I've already done those adjustments and it just saves me a little bit of time, okay? So if I turn the masks on and off, let me just show you what they're doing, okay? Masks off. So you look at her face and skin. Is just smoothing a little bit, okay, brightening her eyes and darkening her lips a little bit, okay? So it's doing a nice job right out of the gate, okay? Then I think all I'm going to do is do select background, okay? And I'm going to not necessarily darken it because it's pretty dark already. I want to make sure that I have some sort of texture in there. If anything, I want to give it a little bit more contrast. And then I'm going to blur it. Okay, so I'm going to take texture down and sharpness down. Okay, that's the lens sharpness. And if I go clarity, it kind of makes a mush. So I don't use clarity a whole lot. Haze will brighten as well. It kind of takes all the blacks away. So if I do that, I want my shadows back. I want some blacks back. And like so. But that is actually not too bad. Okay, so see what that's doing? It's kind of making a halo around her. So maybe not so much dehaze. Again, I'm doing this dance of darkening, lightening. Let's see that. Don't want blacks now. Somewhere in there. Okay, so I want to blur it. So it just doesn't take away from her. Okay, I'm actually leaving the highlights up. Like so. Something like that. Okay, so really quickly, I went from that, which was already a good portrait with nice lighting, to that. Right. This one, I think I want to crop a little bit because this light area up at the top bugs me. And the other thing, when you're doing portraits, when the shoulders are straight onto the camera, okay, so like I am right now, the body is at its widest, okay? Oh, great, Karen, you're still here. So having her turn, okay, see my shoulders? So when I'm turned away from the light like this, look how much narrower my body is compared to this. Let me do that again with me larger on the screen. Okay, so when I'm facing the camera, look how wide I am this way, especially with my arms at my sides like this, versus turn sideways, versus put your arms out as well. Okay, so girls, separating between the arms causes a nice, gives you a nice separation there and slims the body a little bit. Okay. So I could crop this one, but I like the way you've positioned her sort of in this third. So instead of cropping it, I'm actually going to use the erase tool. Okay. So the content aware remove tool. And I'm going to use it large. And I'm just going to do a swash over here. And then see what happens. Right. Now it's going to pick something. And if I don't like it, I can just hit refresh and see if it does a better job. And I'm just watching that upper corner. You can zoom in a little bit here. I'm just watching that corner. Make sure I have it selected. And if I'm not happy with what it's doing, I can try clone instead. But of course, with clone, I have to pick the source, right? So I'm just going to pick from here. And I think that's actually better. So it keeps the texture in the leaves, right? I could even dial it down a little bit, keep the highlights if I want. But I think that's doing a better job, right? And again, talking about like little minute things, right? I'm going to go back in with this remove tool, and I'm going to get rid of some of these, what I call specular highlights, right? And I'm just going to clone them out, right? Because they will take your attention. So the ones that are the brightest is what I'm looking for. And if I don't want to tone them all the way down, I can just go a lower opacity, like so. Okay, so then it's toning them down without complete removal. Okay, these ones here, I gotta be careful because I don't want to get into her shirt. Oops, gotta wait for it to do its thing. Like so. So I'm just gonna turn this off so you can see what this is doing. Okay, so I'm gonna turn the cloning tool off. So off, see all the little white spots? And on, okay? So that's really just cleaning up the background so that she is the main focus, okay? Remember the upside down trick? And I feel like I want to vignette a little bit more on the bottom of her shirt. So I'm going to use a linear vignette for that. I could do radial, but I just want to do the shirt. And I'm going to come up from the bottom like this. And just bring the exposure down. So see how that just fades into her? Now, if I don't want it affecting the background, what can I do? Because the background's already dark enough. Subtract background. Okay, so now it's only affecting the shirt. Okay, like so. So let's see our full before. See how the shirt is brighter? Okay, now we've solved that problem. Okay, her face is absolutely the first thing that you see. Okay, now this one I would actually take into Luminar to do as well, because with the squinty eye, you can actually open the eye using Luminar. Let's just see. I don't know if it's going to get this one, but let's just try. Let's try this one in Luminar. So I'm going to open this one to show you how you can open the eye. And while I'm doing that, I'm just going to do a JPEG because in the essence of speed here, while I'm doing that, I can also apply the sort of blur effect that I like to do on almost every portrait. So even though I use Lightroom as my main editor, I use Luminar as my finishing for portraits, and again, my main portrait editor for skin and so on. So Lightroom's done a nice job on her skin. in terms of smoothing and so on. Okay, if we zoom in, we can see that her skin is really good and she doesn't have a lot of blemishes or anything. Okay, but if we go into face, okay, this is where we'll find enlarge eyes. Okay, so if I do enlarge eyes, it should make them both bigger, but I only want to do that on the one eye. So I'm just going to paint it in here, right, using the mask. And now I've probably gone too far, but you can see it's only affecting that eye. So she's winking at us. And then I'm just going to adjust it. All right, let's see. She's going to wink. Let's see how that's just affecting that one eye. Okay, and if I want to do any other face editing while I'm here, I can do that. Okay, so I can do slim face, tiny little bit. I like to do eye enhancer, which really, look at what it does to the irises, brings out the color. Okay, a little too much. Let's give it a little bit more flair. She doesn't have dark circles under her eyes. We could darken the eyebrows a little bit. She doesn't have red eye. I find that sometimes red eye, yeah, does that. So if they have brown eyes, it's taking out the color that I just put in. The other cool thing that you can do with Luminar is actually change the eye color. You know, even though we have some nice eye color here, I try and find one that's closest. And I think for her, honey, okay, look at that. So I'm just going to bring this up a little bit so you can see what it's doing, right? When I change it to a different color, you get more eye color. See that? So it's taking away some of the reflections in the eyes, right? And bringing out more color. So it's matching her original color pretty nicely. Let's try hazel because I can't decide if she's got, no, that's too blue. Yeah, brown is too dark, I think, for her. She's got a little bit of green, but a little bit of, no, I think golden was the best one for her, the honey. No, too green. Or, of course, if you want to change her eye color, right, you can make her have any eye color you want. But I think we can even give her cat eyes or owl. I think honey was the best. So I'm going to stick with something like that. That matches her hair color really beautifully as well. See that? So it's opening her eyes, giving her a little bit of eye color. Okay, while I'm in here, I should have done the mouth. We can darken the lips. And I could have done this in Lightroom as well, but while we're here, give her a little bit of color on the lips. Now, I tend not to, you know, do this kind of thing because she's not wearing lipstick like that. So I keep these kinds of edits more subtle. Right? But darkening the lips is good because it's using her natural lip color that's already there. Right? I like that. Right? While we're in here, now notice I blurred the background in Lightroom. If we want to take it farther, we've got the portrait bokeh tool in Luminar. And this one masks the background for us nicely as well. So if I just dial up the amount, we should see it pop into place. Right? We can see that it's masking her like that. Usually what I do is I set my strength to about 50 and I just sort of go around the outside, overlapping sort of the two edges. So the brush really soft so that I've got the inner circle sort of on the edge of the person and the outer circle on the background. And it just sort of fades that blend a little bit nicer. Okay. We can make the highlights glow a little bit more. See, now we get a little more bokeh. See that? I want to take this to an extreme just to show you what we can do with this. Right. I could change the color of it, make it a little bit greener, or go the other direction and make it cooler. I actually don't mind making it a little bit greener. And I usually correct this way. Right. This also smooths out smooths out some stray hairs. Right. Let's see what it's doing. See, there's this piece of hair down here, right? And if I say, okay, I want to blur that one, I can just tell the program, yeah, just consider that part of the background, and it's going to blur it out. See that? I didn't do a great job of getting that little piece of hair there, but like so, something like that. See, now it's kind of blending in with the background. I could go with an erase tool and solve that as well. Right, so look at what a neat job we can do with the background that's already good, right, with one tool. I'm not going to go quite so crazy with that one. Let's dial it back a little bit. Something like that. Okay, but you can see what we've done with the eyes and her. Okay, you can also slim the body a little bit here using these tools. We don't see her abdomen, but this should tuck the shoulders in. And I think we're into catching up mode again. Apparently my computer is tired today. Karen says she's here. Awesome. Right. Do you have Luminar, Karen? I can't remember if you've got Luminar or you're just using Lightroom. Right. I'm still waiting for it to catch up. Yeah, see, we can definitely see what it's doing on the background, but I'm still waiting for it to catch up on this one. There's one more tool that I really want to apply on here. So you have Luminar. Okay, great. So you can definitely use it to do the eye, and if you want to do more of the background blur. But honestly, the preset that I applied in Lightroom with the skin and everything, I would just do that in Luminar because it just makes does a nicer job. We can even try color harmony on this one. I don't know what we're going to get here, but we get a little bit more contrast in the skin. Ooh, that's kind of nice. Look at it, brings out some glow in the background. That's kind of nice, actually. Right? And I'm going to go with Orton Effect under Mood, or under Glow, sorry. And that's my favorite method of softening. I usually go to about 20, 25. And it usually needs to be the brightness turned down. And the contrast, I find it gets a little too contrasty. But somewhere like that. See how it's just giving that overall softness to the whole thing. I think still looks too bright to me. I might do a little bit of dodging and burning on this one. There's not a lot of contrast on her face. Like the light is very straight on. So I want to give her actually a little bit of shadow. So I might use the darken brush and just try and create a little bit more shadow. For example, on this side of her nose. So I'm going to do like here. And then over here, just coming in on the edge of the face. Okay, and this is called sculpting. So I'm looking at the light is already coming from this side. So if I'm going to make any shadows, it's this side of the face that needs to be darkened. Okay? And it's very subtle. Very, very subtle. Okay, so now she's got a little bit of circle under her eye, but I can work on that. See how that's adding a little bit of contouring to the face? Okay. And I might just darken it overall. Her face a tiny little bit. We could try super contrast as well. That's another good one. We could try that on highlights because I feel like her skin, yeah, see her skin is more of highlights. So brightening highlights. works as well to darken this part of her face. And let's say we want to darken the midtones a little bit. See how that's adding a little bit more as well. And I might just mask it onto her face on this one. Just like that. Okay, so there's our before. This was from Lightroom, which was already good. And there's our Luminar edit. Okay, so I've kind of created this thing under her eye now. So I'm going to go back here, and because when I did my burning in here, I created a circle under her eye. So I'm just going to see if I can get rid of it with this. Yeah, I'm just going to mask it in. I just want to take care of this area right here. Okay, so I'm just masking it in there. And if I'm not happy with it, I can use the cloning tool. Okay, so I always clone at like 30%. And let's get a smaller brush. Okay, so going from here and just sort of cloning up. Let's see, clone from there. There we go. See that? See what it's doing? Easy. All right, save and back to Lightroom. All right, let's see how we're doing. Well, the thing is, Karen, no, it's not just you. I'm running a live stream. So my computer is heavily memory intensive, broadcasting out to 8 different places right now. So that's the challenge. So there's our new image. Marguerite says she likes the look of the sculpting in Luminar Neo. I got the image that you sent me today too, Marguerite. I think it was your little chipmunk. He's very cute. We'll save him for the next fauna. He's very cute though. I didn't want to do him on people editing. He's not quite a people. He might think he's a people. So let's take a look. Where are we? So there's the Lightroom edit. Okay. I'm going to do a virtual copy and reset it. So let's look at these side by side. Put this over here. So if you want to do this view mode in Lightroom and on the keyboard, which is kind of your survey mode, right? So you can see the original here on the upper left. The Lightroom did a nice edit, but Luminar. Look at the glow. She looks absolutely stunning, okay? I'm assuming this is somebody that you know, Karen. Maybe your daughter even, right? If you want to do compare mode, which puts them side by side, that's C on the keyboard, right? And I've got, no, I don't want to do that. I've got the information panel on. So I on the keyboard shows the information panel at the top, okay? Your granddaughter, wow, she's a beautiful girl. You've got a very nice motto for you anytime. So great job on this one. In terms of suggestions for shooting, now that we have this information up on the screen, you can see that it was at f9 at a 60th of a second or 80th of a second. Honestly, if you are using a 2.8 lens and you're doing a single portrait like this, shoot this at f2.8. That background would have been so far thrown out of focus. Basically you would have got that out of camera, okay? So f9 is not what you want for single portraits. Try f2.8, f4. That's all you need, right? That's it. But look what we created there, right? So there's original to Lightroom. And if I there's the Lightroom compared to the Luminar edit, right? Big difference, right? Look at that. Look at that. Stunning. Even just opening that eye a little bit makes a big difference, okay? I'm going to come back over here. We still haven't got our post switched over. I don't know why it does not want me to flip this layer. I'm going to try something. I'm going to remove this layer and I'm going to duplicate it again. And I'm just going to click it once and then close it and wait. So let's see if that applies. But I think we need to call it for today. If I can get that to work, Karen, I'm going to show you. I'll show you what I come up with. I'll post it in the Facebook group. To get the 3 on the screen in Lightroom, you mean? To get the 3 on the screen again, you select them in your grid view and then N on your keyboard, like that. Okay, and it's as many as you have selected. So if I have, let's see, I'm selecting AJ's, right? I would have those 3, okay? And you see the thumbnails down the bottom here. If I want to add to them, I'm just holding down my control key and then I'm selecting more. Okay. So I'm holding command on a Mac, which I believe is control on Windows. And then we can add or delete. Okay. If I select, oops, apparently I moved that. That's not what I wanted to do. If I select all these, it's as many as you select. Okay. If I select them all, same thing. It's kind of like just a contact sheet view. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at what I've got, not in stock, but already submitted. Oops. In terms of categories, we've got a few street photos, but we just did that one. I'm kind of leaning towards going back to water again. We've got a lot of birds as well. So I think I might go back to water and birds for the next 2. So I've got Karen's birds, I've got some from Linton, Trish, and so on. So we've got quite a few bird photos. And let's do that. And what else did I say? Water. So birds and water for next time. Well, one at a time. We're going to do birds next week, water the following week. So birds will be May 24th and water will be May 26th, May 31st. Birds 24th, water 31st. Can't get it straight. Let me write that down. Okay, May 24th, birds, May 31st. There we go. So send in your submissions to this link again. There we go. And we will see you again next week. Please bring a friend along. I know we did a day change and a time change, so we may have lost some people in the process from Europe, but hopefully the Australians will come and join us next week, and I'll get the word out through email and in the Facebook groups again. So if you miss it, you can always find it in the Facebook group. I will post a link to the Facebook group for you. If you're not already a member, we'd love to have you at Digital Photo Mentor Facebook group. And it's a great place to share your images, talk about what we've talked about here, and get advice from not only me, but each other and the other members of the group as well. And I do a very serious job of moderating the group to make sure that it always is a happy, safe place. Camping photos. Let's wait a little while into the season, Rob, because people need to go camping. But let's save that. Think about camping photos for the summer, everybody. And we will work on that theme. So it might be forest or camping or lake or whatever comes with camping, your tent at night, whatever you want to do. We'll work on that for later in the summer. So if you are in Alberta like we are, hopefully we get some rain again and the fires will be out. And Karen says she doesn't do camping. That's okay. You can photograph other people camping. Hopefully we get some rain here in Alberta. So I'm going to see you all next week. and look forward to your bird photos. Until then, take care, and we'll see you soon.